Welcome to Streams of Income with self-help author Ryan Rieger. For the next hour, you'll hear proven methods for how to live the multiple income streams dream. Ryan is passionate about helping others discover their gifts and start their own business. He's published 5 books, and his courses and group coaching programs have changed the lives of thousands of students all over the world. Ryan's books include Private Label, The Easy Way, Finding Your Grace Place, and his latest, Streams of Income. And now, here's your host, Ryan Rieger.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Streams of Income radio show. I'm your host, Ryan Rieger, and today we are chatting with Kevin Amolsch of Pine Financial Group. He's out of the Denver, Colorado area, and he's a real estate investor. He started in the military, bought his first house, get this, using student loan money to buy the first house. So incredible. I didn't even know that was even possible. And then he got up to 55 units, had a tough time in 2008 when the crash happened, but has built up an incredible business with Pine Financial. Still invests in real estate, but helps other people be able to invest in real estate and get a really good return. So Steven, of course, was on with me as a co-host because he's my real estate guy. But this was an awesome interview. If you're interested in earning passive income through real estate, this is an episode for you. Here's Kevin. Kevin, welcome to Streams of Income. It's so good to meet you.
What's up, guys? I'm happy to be here. Can't wait for the conversation.
Awesome. I think we're going to enjoy this already. So you're in Colorado, right?
I am. Yep. Right outside of Denver.
So beautiful, man. I'm in Texas. We didn't say that. And Steven's in St. Petersburg, Florida. So
got it. But got a lot of family down in Texas.
Oh, cool. Okay. Where at?
Right in the Dallas area.
Oh, that's where we are. Okay. What suburb are they in?
Oh gosh, right in Dallas, and then there's some in Mesquite, and then what's that other one? Gosh, I can't remember.
It's okay.
Rowlett, something.
Rowlett, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Rowlett, yeah.
Yep. I'm up in South Lake by the DFW airport, so it's all pretty close to your family there.
Cool.
Well, you came through a podcast booking agent, and I've accepted these a lot more because it's just fun, especially if it's, some of the ones now that you have your podcast, you're going to start getting guest recommendations. You're like, why is this person even messaging me? It has nothing to do with my podcast or anything like that. And most of these you're just going to delete, but yours came through. And anytime it's real estate, I'm like, this is cool because I've done real estate before in the past. But it's just another dimension to what we typically talk about here on Streams of Income. And it's definitely a stream of income. So
it is.
But as I said before, let's hear your story because I love hearing people's stories. There's always golden nuggets that come out from it that we'll just unearth.
Yeah. So I'd like to go back to high school. And the reason I say that is because I hated school. Like I didn't want one more damn class. But I didn't want to waste away my career, right? So, and then you hear like, you don't necessarily need college to be successful. And I was hearing some of these things. So I decided I did what anybody else would do and joined the Army. But here's why I did that. They got me. They got me because they said, look, we're going to pay you to play laser tag.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, hell yeah, I'm in. So where do I sign? Didn't turn out to be quite like that. But yeah, we did spend quite a bit of time in the field. I was in infantry. The thing about the military is if you're smart and frugal, you could have a little savings account going because you don't have rent, you don't have mortgage payments, you don't have food expenses, like everything's covered for you. So I decided to start researching, where do I invest this money? And then you read the Rich Dad Poor Dads and these books, right? Everything's saying real estate, real estate, real estate. So I bought a property, moved into it, had a roommate pay my mortgage for me.
That's awesome. While you were in the military?
So I bought it when I was in the military, and he moved in. And then when I got out, I moved in. Then we were roommates. Nice. So I had the GI Bill. I did go to school finally. I had the GI Bill pay for. That was actually paying me every month. And then I had the National Guard. I was in the Guard at the time, paying for my school. Okay. But I still took out student loans.
Yeah.
I didn't need the student loan, but I used that for a down payment on another property, and then rented out my initial one. Brought my roommate with me.
Real quick. Okay, want to make sure I understand. You took out student loans that came to you instead of investing it in college. You were able to use that as a down payment on a home.
That's right.
That's incredible. Like I didn't even know you could do that.
Yeah. Low interest rate, tax deductible debt. Wow. Great. Turns out I paid it off before all this loan forgiveness. So there's that.
Oh no.
I actually paid off.
Is that
my
okay? So
student debt.
I was real quick. This is how I said before, I have no idea where this is going to go, and I will get back to your story, but I want to ask you a question. Can somebody still do that today?
Think so? Yeah.
Really?
I don't know why not. Yeah, I mean, if the student loan comes to you and not the school, I think you can use it for whatever you want.
Wow.
I wouldn't suggest not paying for your classes.
Right.
But if you got that covered and you can get whenever you can get access to capital in real estate, well, anything really, if you have access to the capital, it creates options for you.
Absolutely. Okay. That's awesome, by the way. Okay. Keep going.
All right. So moved out. The worst tenant in my entire life was that very first one. Learned so much from it.
Yeah.
That's totally how it is.
Exactly right. Well, you learn the lesson, right, Steve, that you have to actually screen tenants.
Yeah, you don't know any of that stuff. I go to whatever the paper supplier is and get a standard.
That's right.
I'll get a sign. I put sign out, put my number out there. They just
that little tiny for rent sign, and exactly right. The notepad with leases.
It's a pretty common theme when you get started. Everybody has that same like origin story going through.
You want to pay me rent to live here? Yeah. Where do I sign? Right. So they moved in. We can go into that story if you'd like, but it was a nightmare. But that was my first investment. And I saw that my value was going up in my property. My tenant was paying off my mortgage for me. I was making cash flow. It was like $400 a month, which is pretty good on a rental property.
Very good.
Especially the first one.
The very first one. I was like, you know what? This thing actually works. The books are telling me the truth. Like I can really be rich if I focus on this. Mm-hmm. So I really started focusing, and I had my stint in foreclosure investing, which was a disaster. And then I learned how to negotiate with owners. So my passion was finding the motivated seller, sitting down in their living room, negotiating a deal.
Yes.
And I
same side of the table instead of the opposite side of the table.
Exactly. Yeah. All of the neuro-linguistic programming sounds like you studied some of that.
Yes, sir.
All of that. It's fun. It was a real joy for me to do that. And I started buying 1 or 2 properties a month. And so that's how I ended up turning this into a career. Wow. But it's interesting because to find motivated sellers, and Steve knows this is hard.
You bought one. You bought 1 or 2 properties a month?
Yeah, I was buying 1 or 2 a month. And I did that for years. So like while I was in college, I was working in the evenings. I got so lucky, you guys. I got this job at a bank where I was negotiating loans, like auto loans and credit cards and that kind of thing at the bank. But it was all over the phone and it was all inbound. So while I was sitting there waiting for the phone to ring to speak with a client, I was able to study, do homework.
I thought you were doing outbound calls.
I was not doing that.
I was like, that's like, I didn't mean to cut you off, but you were studying. That's probably
I got my schoolwork done. Yeah. So I used the time between classes, like as I was walking across campus, and my breaks and lunches at work to make those phone calls. And then on the weekends, I'd go out on the appointments. I'd hang my signs. I did a lot of, we call them bandit signs. We'd hang those up, and all my direct mail campaigns and all that was on the weekends. But it was great.
I know we'll probably talk about this, but can you give a short answer to how you were able to buy 1 to 2 per month?
Yeah, so it's crazy because no cash, no credit, right? I was in college. I was literally eating Top Ramen. In my refrigerator was a keg of beer and a can of green beans, and like that's it. And I remember I was dating this girl, and she came over and opened the fridge, and she saw beans and beer, and that was all. We're broke, right? So the way I did it is negotiating with owners. You don't need cash or credit. You don't need any of that if you know how to structure a deal with terms, and the seller participation is what creates that.
Yeah. So you
got to find the right
seller
person
financing
to talk to. Exactly. It's all seller financing.
Wow. And you didn't have to put any money down on those?
The only money I actually put down that was my own money was that very first property I bought.
Wow. That's incredible.
And that was school loan money.
Well, that was the second one, right? So that was school loan money. So.
Wow. 1 to 2 per month. Okay. So we were buying 1 to 2 per month, and you're living on beans and beer.
Yeah, that's right. Top Ramen also, but that was in the cupboard, right?
Okay. And what's next after that?
Well, that's how I got going. And then,
wow.
I don't know if you want to go back to the foreclosure stuff, but I fell in love with the financing side. You'll learn this, and we'll probably talk about this, but in real estate, the deal structure, the way you negotiate it, the way you communicate with the seller has everything to do with how you plan to finance it. It always comes down to the financing. So I fell in love with the financing side and became a mortgage broker before the SAFE Act, and there's no licensing. And that I was, as a mortgage broker, as all of that started to be implemented, and it just became too challenging for me. So I just focused in on the private money side. I needed control of my business. So I wanted to service the loans and I wanted to underwrite the loans. I wanted to be the one to make the decisions. So I just started bringing in private capital, and I would loan it out to real estate investors, which is exactly what I understood.
Wow.
And that's what I do today.
How many did you, how many, I guess you call them doors, right? When you're buying properties, how many did you have when you made the transition over to focusing on the financing side?
Yeah, we didn't call them doors back then, but sure, I had 55 units, and that was leading right up to the crash. Like I had 55 doors when 2008 hit, and everything just started crumbling in around me. So that was a very challenging time that I'm so grateful for.
I think this is another thing to point out. As I talk to more investors, I try to see if they went through that recession or that downturn. I started investing when I was 16. I actually partnered up with my cousin to buy my first property. I actually had better credit than him at 16 than he did at 19, which is crazy. But going through the recession, having some like scars, being able to like see problems and be able to solve them and have the fortitude to hang in there. This is like, I don't know how to point this out, but when I'm looking to invest now, these are the people that I'm looking to do deals with or borrow money from, instead of like the newcomers that are coming in or that have rode up this long run up that we've had. Because I'm starting to realize like, oh, now that things are getting a little tougher now, it makes it even harder to do deals with these amateurs, I guess, lack of a better word. I'm sure there's a nicer word to say it, but professionals versus amateurs, or just people with experience, is the other thing that I'm identifying as I'm doing a lot more deals. But you saying that you've been through that crash and you're still here speaks volumes. I just want to point that out to people listening, that when you're hearing people or listening to people, just see who that information is coming from and what experience they have. Somebody like you, I would trust way more than somebody that's, I just started 10 years ago or 5 years ago and I'm crushing it. Just like, okay, let's see over the next couple of years. It's hard to lose when the elevator's going up so fast.
That's right.
So true. Wow. Man, what did you learn from that? Like, what are some of the lessons? Because I mean, we have a lot of people listen to this episode or this show, and they're not necessarily real estate investors, but they are looking for ways to make money passively or invest. But so even if they never have a desire to go into real estate, you've got some lessons that you learned there that are applicable to other people's businesses. So what are some of those things you learned from going through that?
Yeah, we'll start with the biggest one. It's the biggest mistake of my life and in my business life. So I had an ego, and I was popular at the associations and that kind of thing because I was doing deals, right? So everyone wanted to talk to me, and that felt good. So I'd like to go out to these events and say, I have so many units. And you hear people talk about this all the time. They're so proud of how many deals they've done or how many doors, as you say, they own or control. So for me, I was stuck on that 1 to 2 deals a month target. And so the mistake I made was my goal setting. The questions we ask ourselves and the goals we present to ourselves are so much more important than most people even give it credit for. Like someone like us that are listening to this episode or on this call now, we're high achievers and we set goals and we do whatever we freaking can to get to those goals. So if you're listening to this, I know that's you. And so if you're setting goals that don't serve you, you're going to go after those goals no matter what. So my goal is 1 deal a month, let's say. And now all of a sudden I'm doing marginal deals just so I could hit this goal. So my thought is, especially for the newer folks, and this isn't just real estate, but if you're doing action-oriented goals instead of results-focused, I think you're going to be far more successful. The results will follow.
Preach.
But that's my mistake. I set inappropriate goals because I wanted to look cool.
Yeah, a lot of times people ask, like, it's a common question, I think, when you go and just are in real estate circles, is how many houses do you own? How many doors? I tend not to answer. And when you're doing a bunch of deals, especially when you're doing deals with people, like you can claim a bunch of doors, but it doesn't really mean much. And I think like you, I'm trying to avoid the ego look at me person, and I'd hate being that. I'd almost rather you go talk to somebody else, because the people that I learned from are in their 80s and 90s and have passed on now, where it's just like, I know how ignorant I am. Like I've done a lot of things, but if you were to ask me a question, I go, you got to talk to them. They have the answers. But that is a very common thing in the real estate space, where it's just like pumping chest, or just like look at me more than anything. I don't know if that is a trap or not, but it's interesting to see like the other side of it. If you've identified as that and now you go, it doesn't matter. Is that just a longevity thing, you think? Experience?
Yeah, it's being a millionaire before I'm 30 and then losing everything, you know? So I think
okay, there it is. The up and the downside.
Down,
I think okay.
But
yeah,
look,
I've had a lot of those down pieces where I'm just like, oh, okay, maybe I'm not as great as I thought I was.
That's right. But it's so funny, but you could be it's not that hard. I mean, you could be a millionaire. Real estate creates that so easy. It's so easy, but it's all equity, right? You can't go out and buy a beer.
You can't eat equity.
You can't. No, it doesn't. So I think about that a lot now. Like, what's the true equity and what's my true net worth? So I track that and I do all that. And I'm pretty conservative when I'm doing my tracking, but you got to have access to capital also. And you don't have access to your equity. I mean, you might think you do, but wait until the market shifts and then tell me. And I don't want to be too hard on people that talk about their success, because I'm proud of them and I want to see that. Sure. So I didn't mean to be too hard on anybody. And the number of
I think you were saying it from a boastful standpoint versus like just reality of. Bingo.
Wow.
I didn't mean to cut you off. You were saying to transition.
No, it's all good. Good.
No, that's you said it for me. Thank you. That's exactly what I was trying to say. I mean, you tell me how many deals you do, and I'm proud of you for that. And maybe or maybe not, we want to work together because of your success. But I just don't want to hear I don't want to hear the bragging and the ego. There's a book which I haven't read. I can't believe I'm just bringing this up and I haven't even read it. But a lot of people in the peer groups I'm in have read it, and it's called The Ego is the Enemy. And I've seen the shifts in them from that book. So that
interesting.
It's on my list. It's just,
right.
You know, as an entrepreneur,
we have a very long list of books to read.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So how did you shift from the and when you did the finance? Because I want to get into like what you're doing now, the lending funds and all of that. So went through 2008, and then you're focusing more on financing. So tell me about that journey and what you're.
Yeah, and I still invest quite a bit, but the private lending side, I just love, because I could bring in private capital and pay a nice, steady, consistent return, bring some stability to a portfolio. It's not the syndication. Like, you probably have a lot of syndicators come on and they're talking about these 20-30% returns and all of these because they're buying so many doors and all this. This isn't like that. This is not a home run type of investment. It's a conservative, safe, steady return, but it's fantastic for a lot of people. And then on the other side, I'm able to loan this money out to people who fix and flip houses or do commercial repositioning or maybe some new construction. Yeah. They're adding value to the community. They're adding value to their pocketbook. So I get to help them make money and them make money. So this is cool. This is the business that I love.
Yeah. Do you have to be accredited at all? Do you have to be an accredited investor to invest with you?
No, Ryan. Actually, what we did was we have 4 funds. We have 4 funds now. This is our 5th. We closed one down, so we have 5 funds or 4 funds. Check it. We started at 5. We have 4. See if I can get this right. All the other ones are equity investments. So what that means is when they invest in the PPM or they invest in the LLC, they are part owner of that group, that entity. So you're along for the ride, ups and downs. You get to participate as we go. Now there's a preferred return, and there's all these things to help. But look, if there's trouble, you participate in that. What we decided to do was do a debt offering on this next one, and we went public. So we went through the SEC to do a Regulation A, which all that means is it's I could offer public. Yeah, it's tough, but it's debt. So now I could promise a return, right? So I could say I'm going to pay you 8% return, and it's something that you can count on, and it's liquid. You can get your money out, you can put it in.
Oh wow!
So that's how we decided to go, because it's much easier to advertise, which we're allowed to do now, if I could advertise a return.
Yeah. So even just so a quick question. So somebody who's not necessarily a savvy investor could give you $1,000, or is there a certain minimum or anything like that?
Yeah. So we had a 25,000 minimum, and I even thought that was too low. And the reason I say that is because a lot of the smaller investors, they're more, how do I say this nicely?
I know what you mean.
Call.
They're going to be calling, "Where's my money, Kevin?"
Yeah, exactly. A little bit more maintenance.
Maintenance. Yeah, that's the correct.
That's a good word. Yeah.
But look, I want to try to help as many people as we can. And so when the stock market started crashing a couple of years ago, we decided to lower our investment amount. So it's 10,000. And just like I expected, those are the ones that they just need the money. Like, oh, I have a furnace that went out. Now I need my money back. That kind of thing. So it's not exactly what we're looking for, but I do want to help as many people as we can.
And the return, you say 8% on that?
8%. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
How many funds have you done and started to get to this point where you're taking one public?
Yeah, so this is our 5th mortgage fund. I've done one syndication on a land deal. So that's very similar. It's still,
is that how it started, with a syndication, then you started putting funds together?
No, I did the syndication later. I started Pine, and I was just brokering individual investor with an individual investor, I guess, private money investor with a real estate investor. I just brought them together and charged a fee. It's a funny story. So apparently you have to be licensed to do that. And I didn't.
Yeah, I was going to ask. Okay. Because this is what I'm just now learning and facilitating some of that. I was doing it through contracts where I'd have an option or something else, but I knew that you couldn't just broker it because you need a broker's license, but I learned some workarounds. But continue. I apologize.
Well, so that's a funny story. I got invited into the state's regulation office.
Man.
Okay. So in business, you have these, right? You have challenges. If you don't have challenges, and I don't believe you could be successful. So that's right.
You know what I love about that, Kevin, is like there's so many entrepreneurs I know that would just be like, "Ooh, that's scary. I don't want to do that. Let's figure out. Let's have everything, all the dots connected before I take action." You're like, "I'm just going to do this." Like, "Oh, I didn't know I couldn't do that. Now let's pivot." You just did it. I love that about you. And Steve and I are kind of more that way. We do that and then figure out what did we end up doing. And we make mistakes, but we're action takers.
Yeah. I think that's how you be successful. I try to tell my clients, and we do a lot of education through the YouTube and the podcasting, and I speak a lot, and I try to tell everybody, like, you have to make a mistake. Like you're not taking action because you're afraid of the mistake. But if you could shift your focus and realize that you have to make that mistake to be successful, it's easier to just go out and do it, right?
Yeah.
Let's just go out and make that mistake. I know I have to do it, so let's just get it done.
Yeah.
And so that's how I like to think about it.
And it's all part of the learning process too. Yeah. That's awesome.
It all sounds good in theory, but when the rubber meets the road, that's where you really learn.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Wow.
And people, and this, when you're the seminar junkies, right? They'll never do a deal, but they want to learn everything they possibly can, and analysis by paralysis or whatever you call it. But I really caution people to do that. I think if you spend money on a seminar, or I even did it with a book. If you read a book or go to a seminar or event, do just one thing that you learned out of that. Go and do it. Don't pick up another book until you do it. Pick up a nonfiction if you really enjoy reading, but don't move on from that one.
Right. Well, that's good. You wrote a book talking about books, 45-Day Investor, how to buy an investment property with nothing down in 45 days or less. Now, I knew like before 2008, that was a lot. I mean, people were talking about that. So you wrote this past 2008. I got cash back on how do people do that now? Don't give up all your secrets. So I want people to go buy your book, but what are some of the ways to actually still accomplish that now?
Well, it's been tough to do the owner financing stuff in the last several years, and it didn't make a ton of sense because you could borrow at 3% and 4%. So that if you can go get that money, you should get that money, right? So we were seeing that people go that direction. Now you hear the words like house hack and BRRRR and short-term rentals, and you hear all of these things that people are doing, but all of that's going away. What you're going to see come back is the owner carried lease options, subject tos. It's coming.
It's starting. It's starting already.
And that's going to happen. Are you saying that's happening because the interest rates are starting to increase? Is that why that's coming back into play?
Yeah.
Banks are getting harder to.
Yep. Sorry. Exactly. Well, 3, I guess, if you talk about the credit crunch, because we are in a credit crunch. But if you have elevated interest rates and little equity, because we have seen softening, that's when the owner carry stuff works perfectly.
Interesting. Well, give me an example of what a deal like that might look like. I know every deal's different. Steven's telling me like every situation is different. What's an example? Maybe one of the deals you did before that, people wrap their heads around what it looks like.
So I'm just thinking of Julie for this example. And I don't know why she popped in my head, but so her son got diagnosed with autism, and she wanted to be home with him. So she decided that buying rental property would create that freedom for her. The problem with rental properties, and this is one of those myths that people don't really share, it's really, really hard to make a living on cash flow from rental properties. You need to find other ways to bring in cash. It'll make you rich, but it's a long game, right? I'm not trying to discourage anyone from buying rentals. I think you absolutely should have that in your portfolio, but it's not going to create the wealth and the freedom day one like people expect. And so she bought into this. Well, I'll just create this cash flow. And it wasn't creating the cash flow. In fact, it was negative at times because of maintenance and turnovers and all of these things. So she started going backwards from her goal, and she was desperate to take care of her son. So I ended up buying a handful of properties from her. And she didn't have equity because it just wasn't enough time to accumulate that equity. The market was rather flat at that time. So I was able we did lease options on all of those. I was able to lease the property, basically guarantee that her mortgage payment would be covered. Yeah. And I would sell the property on a rent to own, which is different than a regular rental. So I could increase the rent amount, and I was able to produce a little bit of cash flow. Wasn't great. Yeah. And then I was able to avoid the maintenance. So it was a win for me because I had a little bit of cash flow and I was creating equity as a property value.
You solved her problem.
And I solved her problem.
Oh, that's so cool. Wow. I love that. Well, how do you, other than just going around like Steven talks about, he goes around and knocks on doors and meets neighbors. Awesome. And what's the best way to find a Julie?
Yeah. So the first thing when you start talking about marketing is you got to know who your target is. And that's where people miss. They say, well, I'm just going to go hang up signs, but okay, what are you looking for? Right? Because the messaging and the placement of those signs are very dependent on what kind of a deal you're trying to attract. So I would definitely take a step back and say, what kind of deal do you want to do? If you want to do a Julie deal, like a lease option, then you're looking for pretty homes in nice areas with little or no equity. So I'm not attacking the foreclosure list. I'm not attacking the probate lists. I'm not doing any of those. What I'm doing is I'm looking for landlords. Here's how I did it. So I would do landlords because I'm looking for the landlord by default. Right? I can't sell it because I don't have enough equity and I have to move. So now I have 2 payments I need to satisfy this payment pressure. So defaulted landlords is a great way to go. I really love stale listings. So a stale listing is, let's say a seller signs up with an agent to list the house and they have a 6-month listing and there's not enough equity in the property to bring the price down to where it's going to sell with an agent, pay all the commissions and all of that stuff. So they leave it at a certain price and they're just praying and hoping. Well, after 6 months, what happens is all of the real estate agents in town are going to start calling them and sending them mail, and they're trying to get the listing, right? Yeah. Didn't work with this guy. I'm way better. Let me list it, right? That's how that works. And they don't want to list it to sell it. They want to list it so they can put their sign in the yard, and that's advertising for them, right? So for me, I'm not licensed. So I can advertise to that seller before it expires. Once, no agent is allowed to advertise to someone that's already represented. So that's a no-no, right? So not being licensed has some advantages.
That's cool.
So let's say 3 months, 4 months into a listing, I just start hitting them with letters. Every week they'd get a letter from me. I don't want to list your house. I want to buy it. No listing. I want to buy it. And so I would get phone calls that way. And those lists are so easy to get. You can get it for free. Think about an agent. It takes them 5 minutes to pull that list and they can send it to you. And they'll give it to you for free because look, I'm meeting with a lot of motivated sellers. I can't help everybody. I mean, there's some situations where they really truly need a good real estate agent. I bet you're the real estate agent they need. How about I just send you all of those referrals? All I want in return is these lists. So it's easy to get it for free, right?
That's so cool.
In trade.
Trade.
Wow. Love it. Where would you have somebody, and Steve, I know you probably got some questions, like on your sheet here, we talk about creative real estate financing. I mean, maybe we kind of covered that with the seller financing. But as for somebody who's thinking about getting involved in real estate, would reading your book maybe be one option if they're wanting to be the landlord? If they don't want to have anything to do with that, they just need to work with you as, here's my 10 grand. I want to make that safe 8%. Is that basically kind of the two options that you see?
Well, it's interesting you asked that, because the 45-day investor doesn't have anything to do with hard money or private money. So my lending company is all about fix and flips, and we do a lot of BRRRR strategy. So people that want to acquire properties and keep them long term, but they're going to be signing on debt. They're taking on loans. The 45-day investor is highly focused on the lease option. So I would not participate in that at all. I wrote that book because I was getting so much pressure. How are you buying a house a month? How are you buying 2 houses in this month? How are you doing it? I was getting asked that over and over and over. And I was like, why don't I just write it down? So that's why I wrote the book. It doesn't help Pine Financial at all. But if you're limited on cash and limited on resources and you want to get into this game, lease options might be a good way for your entry. Yeah. And if that's the case, then I would definitely
explain. So I know Stephen knows that, and I feel like I understand that. But so for somebody who's like, what's a lease option? Just break that down.
Yeah, it's exactly what I did with Julie. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to lease the property for you for a set price, make sure it covers whatever we need to cover, right? And then it's interesting because there's so many different variations here. I've paid less than what covered the mortgage and had them pay me the difference on occasions.
Wow.
And just like Stephen, I've had people pay me to take
help you lose less
to their deed. Exactly. That's exactly right. I've had people sign me the deed to their house over to me and give me a check at the same closing.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
So
the lease option would be like you're leasing the house with the option to buy it at a certain point. And then you just had that person that was doing the rent to own, and they're the ones that are actually buying it.
That's right.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, and in that book, we talk about like specific language to use to negotiate these deals, which I haven't read that in any other book. Like these are the words I use when I'm negotiating this.
Yeah.
And then the scripts and the forms and all that. So my idea was really to make it, if you buy the book, you can go out and do a deal in 45 days or less.
Yeah.
I wanted to put it all in there.
Yeah.
Now that's hard because that means that you're not going to have your little blankie with you, right? You're not going to have someone holding your hand. You're going to actually have to go out and make this happen.
Step out.
So cool. Stephen, what questions do you have? I know you can go deep and ask all kinds.
Yeah, that's where all of my questions are going to go.
I don't know if they're to do it. This is your time.
Well, the funds is what I'm super interested in because I do. The more I learn, I think being a fund manager suits my knowledge, skills, and what I enjoy. I just want to hear about that story of like, how did you get to, from whatever you did first to like spark that interest of being, I'm assuming you're a fund manager or at least participating in those funds. And then what was that journey to get to where you're at now, to go in public?
So I started Pine Financial in 2008. And the reason this year is so important, and you're going to find a lot of people started their businesses in this time. The reason for that is I was doing this business in 2006 leading up to the crash. Now, when the crash hit, my partner at the time, I actually worked for her. We weren't like equity partners, but she was my mentor and we worked very closely together. She decided I would rather teach real estate than do real estate. She was very good at that. So she wanted to split off, and that's why I started my company. So it was something I was already doing. And then I brought a lot of investors that I built relationships with when I worked with Susan over to Pine Financial. And within 1 year, it's like 6 months later, of course, I had to deal with the state of Colorado first. And then once I got through that, the feedback was, I want liquidity. I want diversification, and I need a smaller investment amount. Because remember, it was one investor to one investor. So if it's a $200,000 loan, you have to fund the entire thing, or I can't work with you. So I took that feedback, and I went and I hired an attorney, and I went and started my first fund. Now I screwed that all up, right? So they were making way more money than I was. So I closed that and started my second one with some adjustments. I started charging a management fee, for example. So I was like, this is a lot of work. I'm going to not only get paid on the fees I charge my borrower, but I want to make a little bit of a management fee for managing your money.
Yeah.
So then we did that fund, and we hit our threshold of 35 non-accredited investors. So a lot of the Reg Ds will allow up to 35 non-accredited. Once you hit that, in order to stay compliant, you got to shut it down. Don't raise any more money. So then we had to start another fund, and then I tweaked it a little bit more. So for example,
and with those, you can't do any marketing, correct? These are just relationships and
exactly.
Okay.
Now you're allowed to market your company and what you do, but you can't make an offer in the fund, right? So it's tricky. I can get up on stage and say, hey, I raised private money. I lend it out to real estate investors.
Come talk to me. Okay.
Yeah, that's the great part, right? I'm not supposed to say that. I just say what I do. And if they're interested, they will.
Oh, you can't. Oh, okay. Okay.
My attorney said, don't, that sounds too much like an offer. You cannot make an offer. And I'm already under the magnifying glass, right? I've already went through that rodeo. So I'm like straight arrow here.
You're on the radar, yeah.
Attorney says, no, I ain't doing it.
Okay.
And then you got to build the relationship. So some people will say, well, you got to go have 2 coffees. You got to know their kids' names, or you don't need any of that. What you need to do is get a questionnaire filled out. So you know their financials, you know, if they're accredited, non-accredited, income, that kind of thing. Do they have the ability to make the investment? My attorney tells me if I get that document filled out, I have built the relationship.
So you have like an onboarding process, and that is the same for securing yourself by getting it documented through that process. Exactly.
You have to do that. If you're going the private offering route, which I would recommend when you're starting out, then you have to have a questionnaire done, and they have to have, you can't be taking on non-accredited, non-sophisticated, those are 2 different things, investors into your fund. You can't do it. So they either have to be accredited or sophisticated. And then if they're sophisticated, you can only take 35 non-accredited.
Yes. These are things that I'm becoming aware of. I just don't know where the lines are, how to draw that, or even how to like get my foot in the door. But I guess it's similar to business. You're looking for the ideal client, the correct avatar, how to get in front of them, and then have an onboarding. But it seems like the onboarding is capturing that questionnaire is a very important part for documentation.
For
sure. Okay.
I have a quick idea.
And questionnaire. Those are the 2 documents.
Okay, let's say, for example, so you're talking about people, because this sounds like this, I'm actually in a fund like that. I have a friend who told about told his family and friends. We could invest any amount that we were comfortable with. And so I'm familiar with this, but just making a connection here. I don't know if this is even possible. But like, since you have all this know-how, could somebody like Steven, who has a group of friends that want to invest money, kind of come under your umbrella for the first fund? Because those are people you're never going to get anyway, except for the new fund that you've got. But are those those kind of things ever done where, hey, Kevin, me and my 10 friends want to invest money. I'll kind of learn from you as the fund manager. You're going to get a cut of this because I'm kind of learning from you using your documents. Are those things ever done in this world?
I think they're done a lot in the syndication world. So you'll have fundraisers and you'll have sponsor fees and you'll have things that you could pay out like that. In this world, it's a little bit tougher because it's more regulated, especially on the public fund. So if we're going to pay any kind of fees surrounding the fund at all, you're really supposed to have a securities license because you're selling a security. So to bring a group in and you can invest in a group, we have had a few people do that. I think it's weird, quite honestly, but if you wanted to do that, then your benefit would be through the management fees of the little group, right, that you put together, and it couldn't come from us.
Yeah. Okay. Just wondering if there's a way for Steven to kind of glean knowledge from you without, and you getting a piece of the deal because he's learning underneath you. So you just need a course or a mentoring program he can pay you for.
I'll tell you what, Steven, give me a call. Happy to help you.
Okay. Yeah, because it's exciting, but I do feel like super overwhelmed of just like, I don't even know who these people are. And the more like hedge fund guys I talk to, I go, oh, there's like 2 schools of doing this. There's the traditional way where you go to school, you work on a bank, and then you work for somebody. And then there's like, I don't know, I'm calling them rogue investors, where it's like where it's like you're just going through and figuring it out. Where the hedge fund guys go like, it's impossible, you can't do that, this is the only way to do it. I'm like, yeah, but I've seen other people do it. I just don't understand or even knew what questions to ask them at what time. So just finding more people like you is very exciting to me to go like, there's another example. It is possible. I'm not crazy. I don't know how to do it yet, but I know it's just a matter of time before I can put some of that stuff.
So here's the advice on that. You're going to be the creative mind, right? You have to be. You're the entrepreneur. You're the designer. But you need to have a team behind you or it won't be successful.
Yeah, and that's where
you need to have a good securities attorney that will listen to your ideas and come up with how to stay safe.
That's good.
Is there other key team members that you would recommend, or how would I even go about finding those people? Just cold calling?
Yeah, so my securities attorney, I'd be happy to refer you, but he's very specific in the private lending space. So I don't know. You're not going to be lending the money, right? It's just like
I have no idea.
Type stuff. Okay.
I have a couple of ideas. Lending is one of them, but I don't think that was the main focus of what I was trying to do. There's a couple funds that I see that buy real estate all over the place, and because we travel a bunch and we're doing stuff, I would like to find some tie to make those two work. But that wouldn't be lending; that would be something else.
Yeah. So we call those type of funds blind funds. So they're blind because you haven't not identified the asset yet. So you could those are easy to put together, and you could even test the waters with some of this stuff. So you could, before you file and spend all the money, you could do a little bit of advertising. So this would be on a 506C. I don't know if you want to write that down, but 506C allows advertising, but it's accredited investors only.
Okay.
And then you can test the waters.
Isn't there subs under that too? The 506C A or B, or one of those has like two separate sub categories under those that I was.
That's one I don't know. I'd call my attorney about that one.
Okay. Yeah, it's all very.
There's a tier 1, tier 2 in the Reg A's. So you have 2 tiered in the Reg A, but I don't know about the 506C. I think it's just 506. There's A, B, and C. I don't think there's more.
Okay, maybe that's what it is. I'm thinking A, B, and C, but you're saying the C is the determination for it.
The C is the one that you could test the waters. So if you want to see if you could actually bring in the capital, that's the one you should go for.
Okay.
This is awesome for you and Steven.
Yeah.
Real quick.
That's why I said I know this is probably not good for your audience.
No, it's totally fine. What I'll do is that Kevin, tell us where you want people to go to find you, and then we'll end the interview, and then you guys can chat a little bit more if you want to, depending on your time, great. Kevin. But where's the best place to have people find Pine Financial, your new podcast, and all that?
So the new podcast, I have no idea because we haven't released one episode yet. So we'll talk about that maybe next time if you invite me back.
Okay, cool, for sure.
But look,
you should call it the Blind Fund Podcast.
That's funny. So we're going through kind of a challenging time in the economy right now. We're definitely experiencing a shift, whether we're in a recession, past a recession, or a recession is coming. There's something there. And a lot of people are comparing it to 2008, which I think is silly. There's no resemblance to 2008, but it does resemble after the savings and loan crisis when the RTC came in and started liquidating savings and loans in banks. High inflation, high interest rates. That's the environment. So I really studied that time period and the housing correction that happened in the early 90s. And so I'm comparing that to today so that we can make good decisions on how to protect ourselves and what investments to make. So I wrote a pretty lengthy report about that. I can give it away to your audience.
Yeah.
It's thepinereport.com. So thepinereport.com, and they can download that for free.
Okay.
Otherwise, the best way to reach me if you're interested in the fund or if you're an investor looking to buy properties is pinefinancialgroup.com.
Got it.
And that's for both if they're interested in the fund and or being a individual looking to buy or lend?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you'll get directed. Once you go there, you can find information on either side of the business.
Awesome. Kevin, this is awesome. Thank you so much for being on. And
thanks, Ryan.
Let me know when you want to come back on. This has been fun for me and definitely got no fun for Steven.
Yeah, it's so different and refreshing when there's two hosts. I should maybe do that for my podcast, but it's a lot of fun when there's a little bit more, a little bit more.
Yeah, I knew dialogue. He'd be good on this. So Kevin, thanks for being on with us.
You've been listening to Streams of Income with self-help author Ryan Rieger. From right here in the Dallas Metroplex, Ryan teaches several entrepreneurial courses and group coaching programs to students all over the world. Be sure to listen next week at the same time for Streams of Income with Ryan Rieger.